I have played many games last year, new ones, old ones, and it has led me to discover and rediscover incredible titles. However, for every interesting and original title out there, there is what I can only describe as slop. And for this year, I can confidently say that Star Wars Outlaws is the most boring game I have played. And I know some people are gonna say, but what about Skull and Bones? Listen, I agree that Skull and Bones was probably equally as boring as Star Wars Outlaws, but at least it tried something different. This game is basically what happens when there is a lack of motivation across the entire development team, and because of that, it affects the end product, and makes everyone tied to the game look like a bunch of idiots. Seriously, this game got so boring, I ended up falling asleep twice while playing it. Star Wars Outlaws allows you to visit 4 planets and their orbits. Well, at least a part of it. We'll get to that part later. For the planets, you have Toshara, a map filled with empty open plains, Tatooine, a map filled with even more empty open plains, Akiva, a jungle-themed planet, which honestly is the only interesting looking one, and Kimiji, which is just a town with snow. The maps suffer from what I like to call Ubisoft whiteness, where even if they have crafted a sizable map, they feel incredibly empty, despite the many things you can find. So basically those maps are big expensive spaces of emptiness with the occasional settlement here and there. Sometimes you'll fall upon faction territories and outposts with loot in them, but most of the time it's just nothing. You will be using your speeder to get around most of the time, which is fun for the first 2 hours, but quickly loses its charm, and you'll be finding yourself using fast travel point to get across the map. Throughout your explorations, you will come across towns and villages. These act as your hubs to purchase new items, meet up with people who will give you contracts, upgrade your ship, and some other activities. The main problem with these hubs is that they suffer from what the overall map suffers from. In other words, you explore a tiny map, come across the obvious NPC giving you a quest, a shop or vendor here and there, and a few faction territories. And then that's it. It is very restrictive. You can't really fight anyone while in those hubs, most NPCs won't even pay attention to you even if you're right in their faces. The only thing you can kinda do is send Nicks to steal things from people, but even that is quite limited. Where you can only steal from the bad guys, basically anyone who has the ability to shoot you, but you can't steal anything from random civilians? What? This is another thing that really bugs me with this game, is that, you are an outlaw, but the game treats you as if you're a child who needs hand-holding, can't kill an NPC unless it has the ability to shoot you, can't be a douchebag and kill animals, you can only pet them unless they have the ability to put you 6 feet under. You can't steal or use other people's speeders or vehicle, KVS is incapable of swimming, you can't rob anyone, you can't hurt anyone. Imagine if this game had a notoriety system, where if KVS would steal from the innocent or just generally be a menace, that would then make her overall reputation with the public worse. This would then lead to NPCs calling you out in public or reporting you to a stormtrooper or something. That would already make exploration and interacting with the NPCs a little bit more interesting. But no, that would just be too much work for us. The funny thing is that Ubisoft has done something like that before with Watch Dogs and improved it in Watch Dogs 2. Where the more of a prick you are, the more people will call you out. It's a shame that Watch Dogs 2 didn't get that much attention, because it was a genuinely good attempt from Ubisoft to make a good game. Space exploration is another aspect of the game you'll be doing. With your ship, the Trailblazer, you will be able to go into orbit and explore a vast and impressive orbit of nothingness. Okay, maybe calling it that is a bit unfair, but this secondary map every planet has, again, suffer from the same problem the main map has. Meaning big empty spaces with the occasional point of interest such as a hub, things like asteroid fields, and debris just floating up there. The Trailblazer is alright in my opinion, but it shares the same problem the Speeder has, where it's only fun for maybe the first 2 to 3 hours, then completely loses its charm. To recap the maps, basically you have Akiva, which is the only interesting looking one, 2 vast open spaces of nothing, a town and their orbits. I'm not gonna spend too much time on this point, but I have to say that in recent memory, Star Wars Outlaws has been the buggiest game I have played.
Okay, there you are.
Yeah, what's this about?
No, I'm not mad. I'm impressed.
I can't understand how Ubisoft, a quadruple A company, is able to screw up this much when it comes to checking for bugs. Like, I can understand a couple of bugs here and there, because at the end of the day you'll end up missing a couple. However, in the case of Star Wars Outlaws, it seems like the entire QA team went on vacation or something.
There's nothing there.
Are you serious?
We can't have lost it.
Dank ferry.
Leaving the unpaid intern to test everything by himself, which leads to a rough and buggy experience, which just accentuates the other problem and limitation the game has, like the AI for example. The AI in this game is, for the lack of a better word, shit. It's not Redfall level AI, but it's up there to win the Dumb AI Award of 2024. My favorite example of how broken the AI is happens during stealth section. If you're ever spotted, find the nearest tall grass or bush and just crouch in it, and enjoy the next few seconds while the enemies just try their absolute best to find you in the galaxy's smallest bush.
What was that noise?
Other times when you get spotted and you start a small gunfight with a couple of guards in an area, the others won't even care about what's happening. Sometimes you could be fighting an entire army and some enemies will be clueless to what's happening. During combat, the AI is incredibly inconsistent. Sometimes they'll just be landing their shots.
You failed!
Other times they'll just miss every single one of them. And it doesn't get better on higher difficulties. Alright, we get it. The maps are not that great. The AI is meh at best, but how is the gameplay? Well, it's fine when it works. The gameplay is divided into 3 parts: stealth, blaster fights, and space combat. We'll start off with stealth. Stealth in this game is just very disappointing. The stealth mechanics are pretty much what you would expect from a Ubisoft game, however they are rough. Silent takedown animations are incredibly lacking in impact and are unsatisfying. Most of the time it looks like K-Vest is just slightly punching them on the back of the head, or delivering probably some of the weakest punches I've ever seen in a game ever. Enemies are dumb and blind. Sometimes you could be literally standing in front of them while being in a restricted area and they won't see you. If they ever find a body, they'll be on alert for a couple of seconds, but then they'll just go back to their regular state as if nothing happened. It's also important to mention that there are 2 types of stealth. The first one is the classic out in the open base, where you find a random enemy base, sneak around, and messing up is rewarded by getting a bunch of new blaster holes in you. The second type is infiltration. Basically, in some of the bigger hubs, there are 1 or 2 areas that are marked as faction territories, and if your reputation with a certain faction is poor or worse, you will not be able to access these areas. Instead, you'll have to find an alternate way in, and it basically becomes a stealth mission within the hub, which turns out to be even more shallow than the one that are on the outside. Because you can't really start any major fights, and if you ever get caught, you are captured and then just thrown out of the area. When it comes to games that give you stealth as an option, I always tend to go for stealth when it's available. It's kind of a rule for me. This game made me break that rule, because the stealth got so bad and boring at times, I was like, screw it, just let me shoot something. When stealth is no longer an option, you're gonna have to start blasting. K-Vest's arsenal is very limited. The only weapon you can carry with you is your blaster. You can pick up weapons from fallen enemies, but there's a very limited variety of weapons, and they have limited ammo that cannot be refilled. I wish they would have allowed us to maybe bring a secondary weapon to help spice up K's loadout, because the blaster can easily get stale after a while. They did attempt something with a blaster where it has 3 modules that contains different configurations you can unlock and upgrade, which can help you depending on your situation you're in. Basically, you have Plasma, which is your basic damage dealing module for a blaster. You can switch it to a faster firing rate configuration, but does less damage, or a slow firing rate but more damage. You have Iron, which allows you to deal with droids and enemies with shields more effectively. And finally, you have Power, which is the blaster's heavy attack, which you can set to target a single enemy or blow them up with an explosion. K-Vest also has an ability where she can mark and execute enemies, basically her bootleg version of Deadeye from Red Dead Redemption. Swapping between these 3 modules during combat is the only thing keeping the combat from being too boring. And I can kinda see what they wanted to do with the system, but honestly the upgrades are really limited, which is a big issue with the blaster, making it feel a bit underwhelming. While on the topic of upgrades, K-Vest herself has a good amount of upgrades to acquire. In order to get them, you'll have to first meet the masters throughout the game and complete their questlines in order to acquire them. To unlock them, you'll have to complete specific tasks, for example stealth take down distracted enemies, complete specific missions, acquire specific resources, etc. This is one of the few things that is kinda okay in the game, because it encourages you to try new things and explore the world. Another thing that I think had potential to be great was space combat. Whenever you'll be flying around in space, you may get attacked by factions you don't have a great reputation with, or pirates. And my first issue with the space combat is how easily you can escape your assailants. Seriously, if you ever find yourself in combat, just boost your ship out of the immediate area and the enemies will rarely give chase.
Good. We made it.
Or better yet, if you've unlocked the ability to jump to another planet, just initiate the jump while dodging left and right and that's it. You'll be in the clear. And you're probably thinking, well, maybe if I jump back to the system I was in, well, they'll recognize me or something, right? No, they don't. They'll pretend as if you never existed. But what happens if you decide to stick around and fight? Well, the combat itself is very basic. You have your primary fire and your secondary fire, which is usually a missile. Hitting the enemy does not feel satisfying, and maneuvering the Trailblazer during combat feels like I'm moving a stiff shopping cart. The upgrades for your ship also suffer from the same problem the blaster faces. Very limited upgrade paths where you can only swap between a few alternatives for your primary and secondary fire. You can upgrade other things such as your shield, but I'll be honest, it didn't feel like it did much. One of the big things Ubisoft was pushing forward with this game was the reputation system. On paper, that sounds like a great idea. However, the way it is executed in the game has to be the laziest way it could have been done. For $70, you would expect a system like Red Dead Redemption 2, where your reputation not only changes the way NPCs react to you, but also how the story reacts to you. But not in Outlaws, baby. Here your reputation only affects the factions in the game. There are 4 main factions in this game: the Pikes, Crimson Dawns, the Huts, and the Ashiga. There's also the Empire, but they don't really play too much of a role on how reputations work. The reputation system is a gigantic missed opportunity. In this game, it only affects how you're perceived by the faction, and nothing else. The only thing having a good reputation with a faction brings is that you'll be able to enter their restricted areas that are found in the hubs without any problems. If you ever enter their territories in the open world, they won't immediately shoot you unless you start attacking or do something really stupid like stealing right in front of their eyes. Their fixes will allow you to pick up contracts, you'll have access to specific merchants, and you'll receive items themed after that faction. And that's about it. You can gain or lose the trust of factions in a few different ways. The first one is, well, obviously by being a dick. The second one is through side quests. These side quests will require you to make a choice at the end of them that will make you choose between 2 factions. Obviously, choosing one faction will mean you'll be losing the trust of the other one. The third one is through contracts. When doing a contract for a faction, you will have the option to either complete the contract and gain reputation for that faction, or double cross them and complete the contract for another faction. Or if you fail the contract, you will immediately lose reputation. Other than that, there isn't much else interesting with this system. It's rather boring, and the only reason I found myself gaining the trust of the different factions is because I was just getting tired of being shot at whenever I would pass through their territories. A quick recap of the story. You play as Kay Vess, a small-time thief who's trying to make something of her boring life. She picks up a job thinking she'll make big bucks at the end of it, but ends up being a dumbass and having a price on her head. She escapes to Toshara, picking up small jobs here and there in order to survive. Meanwhile, a mechanic called Waka offers to repair her ship and ends up betraying her. She's almost caught, but then is saved by a droid called ND5, who is working for the obvious bad guy of the story, Jalen. Basically from that point you are tasked to go and gather other members across several planets to pull off a big heist. I also want to mention that the game tries its best to make us like the dynamic between K and ND5 during their journey, but it just doesn't stick. Anyways, after getting everyone including your mom from out of nowhere and pulling off the heist of the century, surprise surprise, you're betrayed by Jalen who's controlling ND5, and instead of running, Kay decides to go rescue ND5 because, I don't know. You save the droid, you blow up the ship, the end. Just like everything else in the game, the story is just boring, and the main reason for that is due to how uninteresting Kay Vess is as a protagonist. Kay Vess is one of the most bland and cookie-cutter safe protagonists I have ever seen. She's not the brightest.
Wait! Nobody move. You either pay me now, or just pay me.
And it doesn't help that she has a face that still haunts me every night. Her crew isn't better either. They're all forgettable characters, except for ND5, again because the game tries its best to make us like him so that the ending feels more satisfying. By the way, it's not satisfying. As for the other characters you meet in the world, they don't get any better. Characters you meet during important side quests are boring and their motives didn't resonate with me.
My gallant rescuer. Tell me, did my boyfriend send you?
Are you talking about that Crimson Dawn?
The story starts okay in my opinion, but it gradually goes down and down in quality. The finale was really weird. Again, that whole thing about Kay trying to save ND5 didn't make much sense. Throughout the whole story, the writers tried their hardest to make us like the interaction between Kay and the droid. There's even a moment where ND5's systems are failing and you have to go save him. They try to make it all emotional, but again, it just falls flat on its face because as a player, I don't feel connected to him at all. Even when you're fighting him during the finale and he keeps telling Kay to run, here the writers are trying their best to make you feel something about him. But I feel nothing because it just feels fake and rushed. Now I know it might be a weird comparison, but compare this to something like, I don't know, the death of Raheem from the first Dying Light. A character we meet only a couple of times throughout the story and you'll see a huge world of difference on how the devs make us care about his death.
Raheem! It's me, kid. I did it! Raheem! You should have seen it. Oh, God. The whole damn building came down! Oh, shit! No, Raheem, stop! Raheem, it's me! It's me, kid, it's Crane! Oh, Jesus! Raheem, stop! That's a fucking bite wound? You goddamn stupid fucking kid!
How steady are your hands? Perfect. That one. Hook it up to the couplings. Quick. But not too quick.
Kay. You've got it backwards.
ND?
It's a miracle he lasted this long.
There is no passion, there is no vision, there is no aggression!
And also keep in mind that ND5 has stated several times that he wouldn't hesitate to shoot Kay if she ever bailed on the plan or abandon her in case she did something stupid.
If you try to leave Tatooine while Jabba has promised to have us killed for doing so, I will be jumping out of the escape pod and into space. That would be a more forgiving death.
So, Kay, I think we should just leave him be? Yeah, I think that's the best course of action here. This obsession with ND5 leads me to only one conclusion, that Kay is suffering from an acute case of Stockholm Syndrome. And also ND5 is Jalen's property, so you're just being a dick at this point. But no, Silver, these recordings are about a month or two old when the game first came out, and since then there have been updates, patches to fix the bad and the ugly out of the game. Well, how is the game now, 3 months after release? So I went back in, opened up the launcher, downloaded an 11 gig patch, and jumped back into the game.
Bruh.
Okay, look, it's not all that bad. These patches have done a few good things for the game. For example, the game feels a lot smoother for me, especially when traversing through the bigger hubs. Now I don't have to worry about falling through the ground as much as I used to, and most of the bugs have been dealt with. And that's about it. The other aspects of the game are still the same. The AI is still Star Wars Outlaws level AI, and pretty much everything else remains the same.
I don't like it.
I think she's gone. Keep looking!
Units, stay alert. An armed and dangerous criminal is in your sector. When you find her, blast her.
Now, do I recommend this game? Absolutely not. You're getting scammed out of $70 if you decide to buy this game. I pray for the poor souls who've bought this game at $130. And for what? A season pass and a couple of bundles? The main problem with Outlaws is the absolute chore it is to play this game because of how boring it was. Maybe if you're a die-hard Star Wars fan who's just dying for anything Star Wars related, you can probably have a good time with it. But for anyone else, stay clear of this game. Anyways, moral of the story. Live or die by your reputation. Man, I think you gotta start taking your own advice, Ubisoft.